And I'm Kevin Ricker.
And we're at the Dill Tavern in Dillsburg, Pennsylvania. Kevin and I have spent the last 3 years working on this building, restoring it back to as close to its original condition as we could. The earliest part of the building is 1794, is these two windows over here. That was built by the Dill Family. In 1800, the Eichelberger family bought the tavern, and then they added this section here from the door over. Then in 1819, the Eichelberger family put an addition on in the back. And that's basically the outside here, and we're going to go on inside now. We're in the earliest part of Dill's Tavern. This part here is 1794, and how we found out that was we used what's called dendrochronology. This is a sample that was used. It's a piece of wood that was taken off the end of this lintel here. There's a huge oak lintel underneath here that we were able to get a sample off at the end and send this to a lab, and they were actually able to use computer techniques to come up with the age of this building by the rings in the piece of wood. And what they came up with is that that piece of wood was cut down in 1794. So that was how we were able to date this building, because before that they actually thought this was quite early. They thought it was 1750. And some of the trim in here, the little bit that was in here did not indicate that it was that early. It seemed that it was more like 1790. So when we got this date back that it was 1790, we were really excited, because then that made a lot more sense, and we understood why the trim was the way it was, and we were able to continue the restoration. Now most of the things that you're seeing here, most of the woodwork in here and the plaster and the partition walls were not here when we got here. There was basically nothing here. It was just one big open space. There was a dirt floor, and all of what you're seeing here was basically researched by us and then reinstalled in the place where it is now. The floors, most of these floors are old floors that were brought in here, and we installed them to make them look like the original floor. There was one section of old floor over in that other corner that is still in place. We were able to figure out where the partitions were by we opened up the plaster in the ceiling a little bit, and there were actually forged nails up along the edges of that ceiling that told us where the partition walls were, because there's boards that come up from the floor in a vertical fashion up into the joists up above, and they were nailed with those old forged nails. So by discovering all these sort of vestiges that were still left there, we were able to determine where the partition walls were, and we reinstalled them back where they were. The chair rail, we had a small little piece of chair rail upstairs that told us the profile of the chair rail, so we reproduced that down here. And the fireplace, this piece of trim here is all new, and the shelf is new. The fireplace itself was here, but it was just stone, and we had to reinstall this plaster, which is the way it would have been done originally. The hearth is also new. That was all taken away. It had deteriorated away, so we had to replace that. This cupboard over here was one of the only original pieces of woodwork that was left in this area here. The windows had all been cut down into the stone, and they had put Victorian windows in here. So all the woodwork had to be removed, all the Victorian woodwork, and then we had to put something that much more in the character of what originally would have been. We had custom frames made, big heavy frames, and the sash all made, and there's old glass in the sash, And you know, it was a great deal of work to restore the windows in this building because they had done so many bad things to them over the years. The plaster work, there was a lot of the plaster was still here, at least on the ceiling and some on some of the walls, but it all had to be repaired, and that took a great deal of work too. That's pretty much it for back in this section here, though. So I think we'll move on into the tavern room, into the tap room.
I'm speaking to you from Sam and my favorite part of the Dill Tavern. This is, in fact, the bar of the Dill Tavern. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the bar and the room that goes with it. As Sam has mentioned, one of the difficulties in this work is having to do discovery to find out what it is exactly that you're trying to put back. You don't want to recreate something that didn't exist, and our purpose here was to try to put back what there was. In this room, the only surviving piece of architecture was the dark blue painted cupboard, which you can see. We had to build from that single cupboard that was here and replace the cupboards that had been taken out and replace the fireplace around that was gone, and we were able to do all of that. As Sam mentioned earlier in other parts of this, another part of the discovery was finding out where the original walls were, where original doors were located. And in this room in particular, one of the hardest things to discover was where the bar was located. And we had some difficulty with that. About the best we could come up with was that there was an opening in this wall, but we didn't know the form that it took or the shape that it took. So we, in fact, guessed and did the most simple treatment, which originally was a pass-through, just an opening in the wall here that facilitated food being passed into the tap room to the patrons here and liquor being served. We didn't really like it, but it was the easy thing to do, so we did it. And after we had done that, we found that there was, in fact, a surviving bar from an 18th century building that was located not too far from here, that had been salvaged and put back into a building back in the 70s. So that excited us greatly. We went to investigate that, and the owner of that property was gracious enough to let us copy that. And we, in fact, did that, scaled it down somewhat to accommodate this tap room, and the result is what you see here. The way this works is, it's called a guillotine bar. Sometimes in old taverns there was a cage here which could be secured so that the spirits could be locked up and patrons couldn't have freebies. This works this way. At the end of the day, the panel is raised up and secured from the inside, and everything is safely put away. And in closing, I'd just like to say that we're closing. We're going to be moving on from here to the tavern keeper's quarters, which is adjacent to this across the hall.
We're in the 1800 parlor, and this section of the building was built by the Eichelbergers, who bought the building off of the Dill family, who built the original tavern. The Eichelbergers bought this in 1800, which was 6 years after the original part of the tavern was built, and they added this section on over here, which consists of a hallway and this parlor room. And this parlor room was the tavern keeper's room, which is actually the family of the tavern keeper lived in this room. The whole family lived in here. This was their living space. The rest of the tavern was pretty much commercial and was rented out and whatever, but this was their actual residence in here. The nicest furniture would have been in here, and if you'll look around you can see that some of the pieces of furniture that we have in here are better than the pieces that we have in the rest of the tavern. There's a reproduction tall clock. There's some actual Windsor chairs. These are real Windsor chairs from Philadelphia that are period. This is a bed that we had made. It's an actual rope bed. This is an actual chest of drawers, early chest of drawers. And again, we're trying to represent what it would have been like for that family to live in this room. Some of the restoration that we had to do in here consisted of work on this fireplace. It had been cut off right here, so that all this work had to be done to to replace all this stuff that was missing. All the masonry in here had collapsed down in here. The hearth was gone, the plaster was gone, all that had to be replaced. So we had to rebuild all of that. There's an actual fire back, iron fire back in the back there. It's very rare, it's quite unusual, and that was there and it's still there. We worked right around that. All these windows in here, again, were all cut down into the masonry, and big Victorian windows were put in. So they all had to be replaced, and the stone all had to be infilled. Some of the other restoration work, the ironwork all had to be replaced. Also, the strap hinges were gone. We had to go out and actually find these strap hinges, and they fit right over top of the actual shadows of the originals. There was a great deal of plaster work that had to be done in here. The main beam had split the whole ceiling wide open. It was hanging out about 3 inches, so we had to cut a 6-foot area out of here and put diamond mesh up and put 3-coat plaster back in there. So that was quite a bit of work. The floors are original. We were really lucky that we didn't have to do much on them at all. So that's pretty much it for the 1800 parlor. Okay, now we're going to go upstairs to the early bedroom over top of the earliest part of the tavern, the 1794 section. We're upstairs over top of the 1794 earliest part of the tavern. This is where the visitors to the tavern would have slept at night. They would have come up the staircase from the tap room down below, and this is a hallway right here. There's a dormitory style bedroom right here with multiple beds in it, and then over here is another small bedroom, and there's 2 beds in this one. Okay. This is the larger of the 2 bedrooms upstairs in the early part of the tavern. It was a dormitory type situation where you had multiple beds, and travelers, as they came in and wanted to retire to go to sleep, would have come up here and they would have laid down, and you actually purchased a place to sleep, which means if these beds were basically filled, if there's one person in each bed, if there was no space for you when you came up, you just climbed in with someone else. So there was no real privacy. People slept in their clothes or whatever matter they wanted to. If they snored, if they, passed gas, whatever they do, it's all done in this room together with everybody else. And one of the neat things about our tavern here and our museum here is that all these beds and our furniture can all be used. I mean, people actually use it. You can sit on the beds, you can sleep in the beds. They have feather ticks on them. They have all these beds have ropes in them. They actually are roped, and we keep them reasonably tight so that you're not sagging towards the middle too badly. But the furniture that we buy here in the tavern, all the chairs, the tables, and everything, are what I call mediocre antiques, which means they're period antiques, but they're not really great antiques. A lot of them may be broken and then we fix them, or they just are inexpensive because they're not great antiques. The point is, you can use them, you can sit on them, you can eat on them, and you can have fun. You can really enjoy the place, and that's what we really like about the tavern, is that it's a place you can come and rent. If you have reenactors that want a place to come and have fun, it's just a great way to learn history and to experience what it was like to live in an early tavern or visit an early tavern. And some of the people that have already experienced it have really enjoyed it and had a great time. As far as the restoration work that we had to do in here, all these walls were all gone. None of this stuff was here. This was just one big open space. There was a slot down the plaster here in the ceiling, so we knew where this board wall went, that it went up into the ceiling. And also some of the boards had actually been cut off. They took a handsaw and they just cut them off, and they were still up there. So we were able to take those little pieces down, and we knew, okay, it's a board wall and this is the way it was constructed, and so we were able to put it back in the same place. That Also, again, a lot of plaster work was done up here. The windows had to be fixed, just like the ones had to be done downstairs. The floors, again, we were very fortunate. They're all original. So that's pretty much it for this bedroom. Now we're going to go over into the small bedroom. This is the small bedroom. We call this the devil room because there's a small drawing on the wall that when we took the wallpaper off, apparently the painters with some red paint drew this little drawing, and nobody really knows what it is. Most people think it's the devil. Some people think it's a crab. Some people think it's a lady carrying a sheath of wheat. We don't know what it is, but we have fun with that kind of stuff. And we actually left the drawing on the wall. We painted around it so people could see it. This is a good example of the furniture I was talking about. This is an actual period bed that we got at an auction, and somebody had sawed the posts off, and the bed was sitting there in a pile, and the posts were sitting next to it. So we were able to buy this, what is a very expensive poster bed, period poster bed, for $100 because somebody had cut the posts off. And we brought it back and we repaired it. So that's the kind of things that we do. We try to find bargains and we try to fix things up and have nice things as best we can. But again, we don't worry about them. If people come in and use them, or if something would get broken, we just fix it. We don't worry that much about it. This bed over here is a reproduction bed made by one of the people here that helps us out doing woodwork, and he did a really super job on it. Some of the restoration that was done in here, again, you can see the other sides of the board walls in here, the original floors, and a lot of plaster work. But that's basically pretty much it for in here.
All right. We're now in the 1800 second floor bedroom, and this, like the room we just left, was also used for guests in the tavern. There's an absence of beds here. We hope to add more beds as they become available from donations or purchases or whatever, or we make them. It's pretty simple here in terms of restoration. We did the street facade windows. They are all replaced, and much like the downstairs windows. The chair rail has been replaced. The windows on this facade are original. The floors were, of course, original. The baseboard was pieced in. A lot of it is original as well. And we did some restoration to this mantel. This part of the original had survived, but part of it had been chopped up and Victorianized, as was often the case. And rather than just make a stab in the dark at putting something back that was period, we actually, once again, went to a local house of the same period that had similar mantels to the mantels downstairs, some of the same artistic characteristics, and we did an interpretation. In terms of size, this is what was here. In terms of the specific decoration, it's a guess, but it's an educated guess. As you can see, this room is not completely finished. There's still paint that needs to be done, and little finish work, but we've come a long way in this room. So from here, we're going to move back to the ballroom. Okay, we're now in the room that's become known as the ballroom. It's the second floor of the last addition, which was built in 1819. We call it a ballroom, and initially it was in fact thought that it was a ballroom being a large room generally in the second floor where people came and danced and cavorted about and had a good time in general. In doing the restoration to this room, we actually discovered that it really wasn't a ballroom. In fact, it had been partitioned at some point in its history, but we've decided to interpret it the way it was thought of, as a ballroom. It's not right, but it's sometimes practicality serves a greater purpose than that sort of accuracy. So we did do that. In terms of restoration, what we've done here is, if I can remember this all, because there was a fair amount, there had been a stairway cut in to the floor here that went downstairs to the kitchen, which we had to remove and then replace the floor with similar material to what's here. A lot of the chair rail had been cut out between the windows, and we pieced all that back in. The same situation with some of the baseboards. Some of that had to be replaced. There had been a chimney in one part of the room that had been added, it actually had been built onto the floor and run up through the roof. So that had to go. We had to take that out. There were some serious issues with the plaster here, and Sam had to do extensive work here to cut a channel out here. We did a lot of reinforcement in the attic just to stabilize this whole situation. You can see behind me a 10-plate stove, which you've noticed in other rooms. We use those to heat the building. There is no modern heating or plumbing in this house. There's a minimum of electrical wiring, which again we had to do to facilitate certain things that are that take place. In the window you can see what looks like maybe some sort of an antique food processor or something strange like that. It's in fact a paint mill which was used to grind pigments, which was then added to linseed oil to make paints back in the period. Now we've actually used that here in demonstrations and in a practical way too, to paint some of the modern reproduction Windsor chairs that we use downstairs. In doing the plaster work and in scraping off some of the old wallpaper and residue that was all over the walls, we discovered that there was this cryptic writing in red pencil. And some of it we were able to decipher. I guess it's the plasterers or the masons. It's somebody's name who thought it was a good idea to leave their mark in posterity. So we've afforded them that, and we've left those areas open so that you can see the different artwork and different signatures that there are on the walls.
Well, thanks for taking our video tour here at Dill Tavern. And in conclusion, we'd like to have a salute to the tavern. Long may it be here to take in the weary traveler.